This is the Franchise Consultant Podcast. Each Monday, we release a new episode hosted by Adam Goldman. Adam has over 10 years of franchising experience, and he's worked hard to realize his dreams by being his own boss. His experience will help you to become a better business owner and franchisee so that you can live your best life and control your destiny. This is the Franchise Consultant Podcast, and this is Adam Goldman.
Welcome to another edition of the Franchise Consultant Podcast. I'm so excited to have my good friend Chris Manske, who has dressed the part today. Appreciate it. I feel very underdressed today. Great to see you, Chris.
Well, it's great to see you too, Adam. Thank you so much for allowing me to be on the podcast. But more, I'm just glad to reconnect with someone that I don't get to talk to enough.
So, Chris, could you please tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and your company?
Sure. I lead a disciplined and well-credentialed team providing sophisticated wealth management and individualized investment advice. Our local Houston Chronicle and Houston Business Journal ranks my firm as one of the larger investment firms in town. I think we're number 7 last time I looked. We put a lot of emphasis on each financial advisor providing a base level of service that includes monthly outreach to all clients. And our motto is every client, every month.
It's great. It's great. And how long have you been an entrepreneur and owned your own company for?
Well, I left the military about 20 years ago, and I grew up in the civilian world at Merrill Lynch. And so in 2012, I brought my practice away from Merrill Lynch and started it under my own moniker, and that's my last name, Manske Wealth Management. And so since 2012, I've been doing the same thing in the same town since 2000, but doing it as an entrepreneur since 2012.
A lot of our listeners are potentially scared of becoming their own business owner. Could you talk a little bit more about that leap from working for someone else to working for yourself?
Well, I think that if you are working right now and you've got the mindset that you're working for yourself, then there's nothing to stop you from making that a reality. But if you're working for someone else and your mindset is, I am a tool of somebody else's, I am a employee under someone else's rules, and my initial reaction to an opportunity is, oh, let me ask and see what I'm allowed to do. Well, then that's a really difficult leap to make. But I bet most people that are listening to your podcast, Adam, when they see an opportunity, they're the last ones to stop, slow down, and say, oh no, what do? I have to ask someone for help. Just the opposite. That's why they're listening to podcasts like this, is because they're interested in getting better at recognizing opportunities and not practicing, asking somebody for permission.
I agree. I think the other thing too is that a lot of people, I know it's sometimes irrational, Chris, but people deal with a lot of fear in my world, a lot.
I think fear is normal. Fear is rational. If you don't know what to expect and you have no fear, then you're probably making a mistake. There's arrogance or there's a lack of humility there. Fear is absolutely the right response when you're taking risk. What is not appropriate is to allow that fear to dominate you so much that you can't move forward. You've got an opportunity, you've examined it, and to all intents and purposes, it's a good movement forward, but fear stops you. You want to really look at that and make sure that you aren't, fall down 7 times and just staying down. You have to get up again.
So what are you seeing right now in the marketplace? I mean, unemployment as we speak is probably 15%. Stock market was doing great for a while. Now it's down again. Now it went up. I mean, what is your thought about what's going on right here? And just what do you see in general?
Well, I think that I normally like to give straightforward answers, but in this case, I really see a huge dichotomy. I mean, on the one side, I feel like there's a lot of opportunity. And I think listeners of this podcast shouldn't get mired in, the fact that the volatility exists, the fact that there is so much turmoil in the job market, that the fact that there is a lot more uncertainty, just in the fact that, hey, this year is an election year. I mean, that alone creates a foundation of uncertainty on which all this other pandemic and quarantine and people's rights getting trampled on with masks. I think that on the one side there is opportunity, and you don't want to let the other side, the truth of all of this nastiness, keep you from taking advantage of good opportunity. In my business, we're very contrarian. In order to get ahead, we need to try to do the opposite of what the typical investor is doing. When people are scared, as the old adage goes, we're supposed to be buying. And I think that serves well in most marketplaces. When things are not at their optimum, probably that's a good time to get in and find some deals. Probably that's a good time to be able to have a lot of people available in the job market to look for that next employee. Probably that's a good time where the thing you've been wanting to do, you can now do it, and it's going to cost you less money. These are the moments when there is a legitimate cause for fear, and it's also the time that you shouldn't let that fear stop you.
Got it. And so if someone is furloughed or out of work, I mean, what kind of advice would you have for that person to just kind of deal with that in general? I mean, a lot of people have their job as their identity.
Yeah, that's true. I've written a few articles on this. CEO World Magazine has published my thoughts on it. Home Business Magazine has published my thoughts on it. And I think of all those different steps that I suggest in those articles, the one that has really resonated with my clients, with some of my network, is that this time at home is not a failure. It's not I am just stuck and I can't do anything valuable. Just the opposite. In fact, people that are listening to this podcast, they already know that. That's why they're taking in this podcast. For folks that are furloughed, for folks that they are needing to get into that next occupation, next job, next challenge, I challenge you to remember that every moment is still the same value to you as when you were in a job. Every moment is still useful to you. And if you're spending your time, binge watching Tiger King, you probably are missing the boat. To give you an example, one of the folks that I know who was furloughed took a calendar and forced himself to have a 90-minute window every day where he was only reaching out to people that he had no connection with previously, and to ask them for 10, 15 minutes just to see what their job is like, to see what their challenges are like, but basically to grow his network. And in growing his network, he gets to see new opportunities. He gets to make new connections. Oh, I'm talking with this third person today I've never met, and they really should meet the first person that I've never met. And so now he's a connector, making these things happen. And as we all know, the next opportunity is usually not going to happen because of your resume. It's probably going to happen because of who you know.
How does one network in an environment like this easily? One of the things that I'm finding, I think a lot of people are finding, is that without the face-to-face networking that was there before, it's kind of hard to create relationships.
It's hard to create a relationship, but it's very easy to create connections. Relationships, we're typically going to need to shake hands. We're going to need to see each other. We're going to need to have interaction of some kind. That's the human in us. But connections, we can grow our connections. Our social networks through social media, these can grow very easily. LinkedIn invites, Facebook invites, Twitter. This stuff is very easy to connect with people. And then the next step is, do you make it more than a connection? I think it's important to do that. You want to follow up with an email. You want to ask them for 10 minutes to talk with them. And that connection becomes a capital C connection. It's not a relationship yet, but it's more than just a name in a database. And when you're furloughed, if you can take your database of 1,000 names, of 10,000 names, and you can take the connections and make them capital C and then slowly turn those into relationships, that's a good use of your time.
So what one characteristic or trait do you think is the most important for a potential entrepreneur that they need to have?
Well, boy, there's a lot of them. I'd say I have to at least give you two, Adam. I can't.
Okay, give me two.
I'm going to say honesty, integrity is the number one, and then the number two is grit. If they're going to push through and they have a solid ethical foundation, there's nothing that's going to stop them. I know here in my firm, we've hired a few folks right out of college. As long as they've got grit and integrity, we can teach them everything else. And an entrepreneur can teach herself just as easily as someone can teach her. So no problem at all.
That's great, Chris. So you're one of the most well-read people that I know. What kind of books are you reading now, and which books are your favorite of all time?
Well, boy, I love these kind of questions. Well, I think that the books I'm reading right now, one is The Italian Secretary. This is a real fun book that takes Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes and puts him in another situation that is full of mental puzzles, and I get a lot of excitement out of books like that. The other book that I'm rereading at the moment is Jordan B. Peterson's book called 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos. I just finished the book called An Organized Mind, and I highly recommend it to folks, especially if they liked Dr. Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep. If you liked Why We Sleep, you will love An Organized Mind.
Great. I love Why We Sleep. That's a fantastic one. One of the biggest takeaways I got from that book is that there's so many different factors in getting a good night's sleep. Do you have your Oura ring, by the way?
I don't have one. I don't. I need to get one.
They're amazing. Yeah, go and get one tomorrow. Seriously, all my friends have it. It turns you into some sort of guinea pig to figure out your sleep and everything else. It's wonderful.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so, I still need to get a watch. These wearable electronics, they're really neat. I don't have any yet.
This is better because you don't want to go to sleep with your watch.
True.
So Chris, if someone wants to get a hold of you, how would they do so?
Well, probably the easiest way would be to Google my name or to Google my book that's coming out in September. The book's name is The Prepared Investor. If you Google that, you can see you can buy it, pre-order it anywhere they sell books. So The Prepared Investor is a great way to find me, or just Google my name, Chris Manske.
Well, Chris, always great chatting with you, and thank you so much for your time today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Consultant Podcast. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, give us a rating, and leave a comment on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Explore great resources on our website, franchisecoach.net. And if you'd like more content regularly, follow us on LinkedIn or Facebook. And hey, be sure to listen next time so you're able to realize your dreams.